was like meeting the Del Boy of circus.
Well, he's on the phone to you for forever, so he can obviously do that and make some good wonga out of it.
Yeah, so he said to me, what did I think about doing a double act with him?
He used us up and then broke some of us, quite a lot of us.
Well, he's helped me pay my mortgage by employing Lorraine for the last 23 years.
He broke his ankle halfway through Streetwise.
Fractured his skull and broke his cheekbone.
Just thought he was a very tall man.
I think we should let him run the lottery.
A person's soul is only so big.
He's good at writing out applications.
Borderlining to the point where I feel like this video is just us trying to get him some help.
I think maybe just wearing this is enough.
This is just to take the piss out of him, right? This isn't part of this.
When Jim was born, around the middle of the 20th century, he was very young and very small. Unlike today. Jim was born in Canterbury to a loving mother, Maddie, who hated doing the ironing so much that she paid her 4 children to do it for her. At a very young age, Jim not only learnt the value of the coin, but understood that with 1 pence per tea towel and 5 pence per tablecloth, it was more productive to iron tea towels.
So the first time I met Jim, probably would have been in the Streetwise office on the Albert Bridge Road, and maybe working for the Belfast Carnival one summer. We had a walkabout theatre piece of jesters, and I think Jim would have been involved in hiring us for that, and it was like the Del Boy of circus.
I was talking to someone about learning how to juggle, and I just got these 3 LED juggling balls that were pathetic. They were like about 1.5 inches big. Couldn't really do anything with them. And I showed up to Morton Community Centre, I think an hour too late. Juggling club had just finished, and it was Neil Hall who was leaving and told me about the juggling club and told me about Streetwise. And then he invited me to the bar. We ended up going to Ryan's bar and spending the rest of the night just drinking while he told me about how amazing Streetwise Community Circus was.
It was at one of the open Tuesday night rehearsal things, and he let me go on the 6-foot stilts, and then I think he let Johnny go on the 6-foot stilts, and Johnny broke the 6-foot stilts or something. I can't remember right. But yeah, I hadn't been on stilts before. No, that's a lie. Mike had put me on the stilts that afternoon once or something. But I was younger and braver and dumber, and maybe had a drink, I don't know. I did 6-foot stilts with Jim the first time.
Do you know what year that would have been?
Nope, 90 something.
32 years ago. He doesn't like being reminded of that. He takes that bad when I mention it. But yeah, saw him the first time when I was 9, and then he started loitering about Morton to use the big space as a practice area. So that's how I met Jim and got chatting to him, because Mum used to work there. So I went and harassed him while she was doing her stuff. So that's how I picked up some of this stuff. And then started working with him after that infamous incident in Dundrum Castle when he rickied his ankle. We wouldn't be here. None of this would have happened if it hadn't been for the ankle. And there should be a blue plaque on that stone, I reckon. The impact that stone's had on the circus in Northern Ireland is immense.
The first time I met Jim was when he came into the workshop, and I thought, this guy has potential. And I started teaching him to do juggling, and he picked it up quite quick. But he's gone downhill since.
The first time I heard of Streetwise was when I came to Belfast and I was working with Ken and Tina of Tumble Circus. Well, actually I was working with Ken because Tina was injured. That's why I ended up staying a bit longer. But then when Tina got better and I ended up staying, Ken was the one who said to me, oh, you should mention that you do a show to Jim who runs Streetwise. So I did. And he very kindly gave me a gig because he'd never seen me perform. But he gave me a gig, and which was in Ballyclare. Wow, what a baptism of fire. Thanks, Jim.
Well, I can remember a a nice bit of encouragement that Jim gave me, just saying that, you know, to stick with doing the shows and stick with doing stuff. And he's given me a few good ideas. It was his idea for me to do the human statue that went very well for me. I've quite a few gigs out of it.
Met Jim more in Bangabuskin festivals, and we were all up doing a Bangabuskin festival, and Jim was like, "Here, I'm starting this new company, Streetwise. Do you all want to come and join?" So yeah, so we all came along and got involved. It was like a wee gang of us at the start.
I think the first time I met Jim after that, I think Jim told me his 3 jokes, and I think I've heard the same 3 jokes once a week for the last 12 years.
When Jim's musical father, Bruce, asked his forever joking son to choose a musical instrument, Jim chose a double bass and wanted to be called Mr. Wet Jibes. Imagining what it would be like getting on a school bus always made him smile. Choosing a degree was the second most difficult 4 minutes of Jim's life. He decided on geography, which a typical day consisted of pints in the bishop's finger, observing the clouds and the sediment at the bottom of his glass. Education wasn't one of Jim's interests. Instead, he liked to run. Nowadays, all he does is run a bath, and since his hernia operation, the occasional runs. But in 1980, a race against 2 gods was set to change Jim's fate forever. In Scotland, the 1500 metres would be the first most difficult 4 minutes of Webster's life. Not only would it be observed by his siblings, Pete, Steve and Liz, but it was against 2 of the greatest runners in the United Kingdom, Steve Cram and Sebastian Coe.
You got the story about him racing Steve Cram? Yes. Show me the evidence. Nobody else has seen this evidence. There's no hint to it. Nobody else has seen video footage. There's not been a news report. There hasn't been photographs. You know, Steve Cram, I bet you he doesn't remember racing Jim Webster.
Jim came last. But not all was lost. He was approached by race winner Sebastian Coe, who gave Jim a seed of advice.
"You should get out of athletics, mate, and run for politics."
"I'm not interested in politics."
"It's all about juggling."
The thing that I always remember about, you know, it was back in the early days. Well, apart from getting rammed in the back of that wee blue van and being wedged in, it wasn't quite the high glitz and glamour lifestyle we were led to believe it was. So driving around the country, sitting on the engine block of a Bedford van with the arch getting burnt off you because he never took care of the van.
Get loaded into the back of a van, go up the road to some town or other and do 8-hour gigs on stilts for about 30 quid.
Remember that, the engine blew up underneath me on the way to Armagh one night. That was a nice touch. I thought I would wet myself, but they'd just get warmer and warmer and warmer until the engine blew up underneath us.
And then when you were away on gigs that you had stayovers and all, or you went down to the pubs after, there was always Jim to retell all of his stories, and you're like, and he'd repeat the same ones, which were great, and we always loved listening to them, but then you'd be like, no, Jim, would you tell story 13 again? Oh, Jim, tell story 27. And you know, he had a big long list of stories.
We used to do weekends away in Sligo and stuff like that. It was myself, Kiva, and I think it was Neil or Johnny, one of the 2 of them, and Jim. Now, Jim snores a bit, so Jim had a room to himself, and me and Neil shared a room together. So which meant Kiva had a room on her own, and Kiva wasn't happy about having a room on her own, so she let Jim know she wasn't happy and wanted to sleep in the room with Jim. And now Jim was, just for the briefest moment in time, you could see the blind panic in Jim's eyes as he was trying to figure out how he was going to phone Gail and say, "Gail, just let you know that there's a 17-year-old girl going to sleep in the same room as me for the next 2 nights." And it was just a lovely moment where he just, because he wanted to try and placate Kiva, but he obviously didn't want to. And that was funny. Me and Neil were in the background just pissing ourselves laughing.
Jim, my memories of Jim are driving on long journeys to Enniskillen or Newry, and Jim would talk non-stop. for most of the journey and drive and roll a cigarette at the same time. As he was driving, he can multitask like no other individual I know.
Yeah, if it hadn't have been for Jim poaching us from the juggling club all those years ago and making me learn how to stilt walk and then play in the samba band, I would have never have gone down that line, and then I wouldn't have had the opportunity years later to audition to be the clown doctor, which, you know, I've been doing for 14 years, and like the other support that I've had, you know, in the workshops and the travelling all over Ireland in the Streetwise van, having fun, you know.
Well, yeah, Jim's kept me employed. He's kept me fed and a roof over my head for 20 odd years. Literally, I would be okay if he put me down as a dependent on his government forms. So
he doesn't like to lose either. This one is a good one. Competition and everything. I always enjoy that. He doesn't like it when he's losing. If you play pool with him and you get to about a 3-game head start, he will just go, I'm not feeling it. Not feeling it. He won't play on. He won't let himself. If he's 3-0 up against you, he's happy to play all night. But the minute he starts losing, he goes, nah, don't fancy it.
Yeah, Achieve, yeah. He's ran Streetwise for the length and breadth, even though we've had a committee. The committee runs things. The committee runs things. Yeah, hi dog. But yeah, Jim has clothed and fed me. Well, I'm wearing a Streetwise jacket. This is what, yeah. He's clothed and fed me for years now.
Putting on shows for people, I like to make people smile, you know, and you know, Jim's the same, isn't he? He's another one of them English blowings who thinks a little bit out of the box, you know.
Jim can redirect you no matter where you are. So in the samba band, we used to go off-road every now and again whenever we were doing gigs in somewhere near Sligo or Donegal, and we'd go up a little tiny lane and send him a photo out the front window of like a track that had grass growing out of it and be like, Jim, we're lost. And I'd phone and be like, oh, you took a wrong turn on such and such, you need to go back there, take a right, take a left of it. And we'd be like, yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Totally knows what he's talking about.
Some say Jim moved to Northern Ireland to avoid paying the poll tax, avoid drink driving charges, or because he got a Desmond in his university degree. But for whatever reason, the words of Sebastian Coe really struck a chord. On Boxing Day, with £120 in his pocket, Jim docked at Belfast Harbour and headed straight to the Crown Bar in search of some politics, only to find himself chatting to a woman called Gail McGuinness. A woman who could talk the leg off a chair and laugh at Jim's stories. When Gail attempted to explain the situation in Northern Ireland,
there's more walls than bridges.
A light bulb moment came to Jim. Stilts. That's what you need. More stilts.
I do think Jim has an unhealthy obsession with stilts. I'll be honest though, if he could get you to stilt walk in underwear, he would.
That's an awful question. Why does nobody want to work with Jim Webster? Because he's such a perfectionist. He's a hard worker. Do you know what, maybe one good reason why people don't want to work with him? Because if you've got a gig on Friday at 3, he'll have you there on Tuesday at 2.
I don't know, is it his bodily smells or something?
He just hasn't met his perfect partner yet.
Is it because you have to get a job 3 hours before the blasted thing starts? Maybe that's it.
He expects too many of us, you know, too much from us. And we only got our level 2s. Like, what does he want us to do, really?
Yeah, in my memory, he's never worked with a female partner. I think there might be something he needs to look at in there.
Jim in shows is definitely a perfectionist. He spends his time trying to work out the best way of doing the most pointless thing in the most difficult way.
Yeah, I've seen them all. I've seen from Hillis to Hugh to Nick to who else has been there?
Wizzy was, I would say, close to perfect, but it just didn't last. And Hillis made him do acrobats, and no, that didn't work out.
I don't think it's Jim. I don't. I think we're being very hard on Jim here. I reckon if you look at the partners he's had, what is the link? If you go through them, he had Don, he had Hugh, he had Nick, he had Wizzy, and he had Nick again. Now the two that lasted the longest were Don and Hugh. So it's an English thing. It's the English just don't like settling. They come over, mess around for a while, and then leave. You can see it all around the world.
Jim has his own way of wanting to do things and control things. I think it'd be difficult to work close because hard to switch which way he does things. He's a hard worker, and like he'll look out for all of the workers and make sure they're getting what they want. But I think after a while he'd want to go and do things a different way.
The reason that myself and Jim stopped working is because I had a hankering to go travelling more. You know, I wanted to go to the circus festival in Australia, and I wanted to do more work around Europe, which I don't think Jim was as pushed to do because he had his hands full with what he was doing here in Belfast and around Ireland kind of generally.
Like, no one really wants to see the juggling. I feel they just want to experience the terrible jokes and the amazing acrobatics that Jim has to provide.
I just can't find the quality of a good partner.
Now, all long journeys can be longer with the Webster Archives Volume 3, with some great stories from the early years.
Just go lying on the ground, and we go, why isn't that?
With fun times.
So we grabbed Conker's Joe and took him down the path.
Oh, and you had your arm was all bruised.
Or taking the piss.
His mum would cook him dinner and put his washing on and fold his drying. Yeah, I'll be sitting outside for 20 minutes. He'd come out, wiping the gravy off.
Fun for any long journey, also available in MP3. Jim and Gail moved to Ashley Avenue so that Jim could be closer to what he loved most. Nope, not this place, but this place, where Jim gained help from the Morton mothers to start his stilt empire.
Well, I can remember Lorraine was on the dole and she got a phone call from, no, she actually worked in Morton Community Centre running a bus, a community bus, and Jim came down to reception and asked, was there anybody here want a job? And then Lorraine says, me, and then from then on in she was employed for the last 23 years.
Lorraine, a Belfast mother who was sent to America because she was so poor, agreed to help 3 hours a week.
I can juggle, walk tight wire, and I'm really good at acting.
Yeah, that's great. I need you to answer the phone.
I can't remember when I first met Jim Webster.
Unfortunately, when the internet arrived, Lorraine's 3-hour week turned into 3 hours a day. Bejeweled online has never been better.
It's quite good because he's got a very good way of not making it feel like you are being pimped, you see. He's kind of one of the nice pimps. He comes, he doesn't come in the full purple gear with the hat and the gold chains. He's a working class pimp.
Only when you're on his radar because if you drop off the radar, then you're kind of forgotten about. So he's a bit of a lazy pimp in that he doesn't keep all his prostitutes in good business. I notice if I phone him up from time to time, I suddenly get some work. But if I don't, I don't.
Jim is definitely one of the better pimps. He's like, his pimp cup is quite low key. He also, I don't know, he's definitely a caring pimp. He always looks after his bitches and hoes.
To be honest, I feel quite lucky if he handpicked me, you know. There's a lot of us to pick. But Jim's going to pimp you out. Is he getting 15% or do we get the 15% then?
As long as he keeps paying, I pimp me all you want.
I like it. I like it a lot. It's nice to get the attention.
Do you know what? It feels great being pimped by Jim. He's a great pimp. Always looks after you, make sure you get paid. Yeah, no, it isn't that bad really.
You have to be prepared. If Jim phones, you have to have like a bit of paper and a pen at hand, and you need to be ready to go speakerphone, and you need to be ready to just write down a bunch of words that whenever you look at, whenever he's off the phone, won't make any sense.
I mean, I started working when I was 16 for £15 for bloody 4 hours in Banbridge or Ballymena and Coleraine. Ballymoney, all those glorious gigs, Ballyclare, mincing around that square for 15 quid. So yeah, you know, it's like the troubles, you don't know what normality is. You just sort of assume that everybody else was doing the same thing. So now you look back and you go, yes, it was child labour. He was pretty much the Fagin of the circus world.
Jim's favourite book when he was younger was Oliver Twist. Not because of the porridge scene, which every Quaker loves, but because of the character called Fagin. Jim needed basic levels to teach a troop of street urchins and make them wise. All he had to do was find a group of drunken reprobates, mostly male, and get them to work 1 or 2 hours a week. How difficult could it be?
Oh, it's great being pimped by Jim. It is great. Like, I mean, I couldn't get myself up out of bed in the morning out of my own steam. You know, having somebody else to actually, you know, do it for you. It's great. You know, none of us could get any sort of work of our own. I mean, look at the hack of us.
In 1995, Streetwise Community Circus was born. In the early days, all you had to do was show up, do the job, and hopefully you had enough money to get home. Nowadays, times have changed. Not only do you have to show up, but you also have to be sober, smell clean, wear a t-shirt, not smoke in the van, and not smell of alcohol. The bonus is instead of the usual 6-hour walkabout performances, you now only had to do 2. Getting work in Northern Ireland was easy, but the rest of the Isle was governed by a man called Killian Rogers, and he wasn't interested in a blow-in like Jim. But this did not stop Webster. Gael suggested on naming their firstborn child after Killian, thus sealing the bond of North and South. Unfortunately, their firstborn was a daughter. Jim and Gael wouldn't dare give her a boy's name, would they? Jim loved anagrams so much that he named his firstborn after a noise. When Nisha grew up, she moved to Barcelona and changed her name to Senora Website. When Killian was born, business in the north and south of Ireland couldn't have been better.
I think it's very, very important. It pays my rent.
If it's done right, it can be very important. If it's done right with a purpose and a goal and the aim is set and everybody knows what it is, then yeah, it's brilliant and it really does work well.
Nah, it's just balls. Majority of us are only in it for the money, sure.
If it's done as a bit of an ego boost to performers, it can go a bit off script and a bit cake. And that happens for everything. I mean, it's like everything is for the...
Well, I mean, it most certainly is a load of balls. It's a load of balls, it's a load of clubs, it's a load of scarves. It's a load of different things that we use. We in social circus use circus as a tool for the betterment of our society and forming better judgment and those that need it most and those on the outskirts.
I like that circus has such an individual, people can be very individual in circus. They can find their own way into it and they can do all sorts of weird and wonderful things with their weirdness. and make it a skill?
Its reach is extraordinary, and it gives, I think, it gives a really open space for young people to come into, and adults to come into and to have fun, to be themselves, to push themselves, but not to be forced.
I think it's very important. Everyone needs to laugh at some point in their life.
It's like any art form, I suppose, important to the people that like it. I don't care about Highland dancing. I'm sure they don't care about circus, so it has its value.
I think it's very important to get people involved in some sort of arts. Circus is obviously one form, and not the only form, but I couldn't dance and I couldn't sing, and I found circus through my neighbour Mike McNulty, who brought me along. So it was something that I was able to do and able to achieve. And I just think there's something for everyone, and circus is there for a lot of people, because like you can achieve no matter what you're doing. And Jim knows that and is bringing it to wider communities, because it's there, it's accessible to anybody, and that's what's great about it.
Circus is very important to me, and I think to the world, for helping people express themselves and to put interesting new ideas into people's brains subliminally.
I feel like circus is one of those skills that really can bring people together in a really interesting way, that there's no competition in it. You're only really ever at competition with yourself in any of the skills. Like, can you get an extra throw in juggling? Can you get one more trick in Diablo? Can you get that little alternating movement? And everyone's kind of together in that competition with themselves, but everyone's really supportive of each other in it.
No, I think it's good. It's nice to see people smile. It gives people confidence, and it trains people with hand-eye coordination. And I find it really rewarding to work for Streetwise Community Circus.
Yeah, as Jim always thinks, it's just stilt walking, but there's more to it than stilt walking and all. Of course it's important, yeah. How is it important? It's just a different, it's not competitive like football or rugby or any of those other sort of sports. It's one of those sort of, I know people don't think it's a sport, but if you knew some of the people we knew, you'd see it is a sport, because they are athletes, they're elite athletes, a lot of the people we work with, you know, they're amazing.
Well, yes, there is a story of Jim that I do remember. He was very inconsiderate. One Halloween, myself and Mike Smith and Michael McNulty were in Ballycastle, and we were putting together the witch, and of course I was the witch. And just before I had to climb a 12-foot frame to get on top of a witch, I get a phone call to say that Jim has fallen off his stilts. An ambulance has taken him to the hospital. We don't know if he's alive or dead.
No, I was on stilts in Halloween in the big do down at the Titanic building. Lorraine, I got off my stilts and had 14 missed calls from Lorraine.
Meanwhile, I had to try and find anybody who knows what happened to Jim, if he was alive or dead, while performing as a witch down the town in Ballycastle.
It was pure fog, Halloween night, full moon. We had a nice day. We drove around these schools. It was a lantern parade, picked up the lanterns. We're all ready for the event pretty much. Jim was in his clown outfit up in the van, putting his stilts on, and then he fell right off. There was a big "oh," and Jim was on the ground. I think he fractured his whole face. And then there was another person, Amy was there, and she was very concerned with keeping the event going, but I was like, fuck the event, pack up the van.
So we're back to that thing, getting on stilts and getting off stilts. It's not as high, not a good point of his.
Once he got home, Gail decided, he did hide the stilts at the back of the van so no one could see them, but she managed to find them, and she torched them, bit of petrol, lit them, and that was them gone. Now he's tried to make himself a new pair of 6-foot stilts. Those were 7-foot because he says they're shorter, but no, we still don't allow him to go on them, so he has to stick to the 3-foot stilts.
As treasurer for SEC, I can categorically state for the record that all public funds were properly and correctly accounted for.
Well, sure, we all know what happened to the money. 100,000 went to Jim's Isle of Man offshore account.
Lorraine and Gary got a new house as well. He does like driving new cars. He's got a gardener. Who pays for the gardener? Nick McCaffrey's got, and here's us slumming it in East Belfast, and they're sitting there out in their fancy pads with electric gates.
And the other 100,000 went, have you seen my new house?
And so, after 25 years, with the help of the street urchins, Lorraine and the wider community, Jim has finally coughed up enough wonga to afford a house outside Belfast with a broadband shed in case of a global pandemic.
I'm not sure if I'm in the cult of Webster, but then I don't think anybody does. If being in the cult of Webster means that you get a phone call at a strange time and have to listen to his thought process for a decision that he wants you to try and make, but he's already made it now because he's went through the thought process, but then tells you that you helped him make the decision which you made, then I might be a member of the cult of Jim.
Yeah, he does like things done the way he likes it to be done, doesn't he? You can sort of figure it out after working what you have to do when you're working with Jim is you have to drop a wee seed of thought into his head, and about 3 or 4 months later he'll come back with a great idea that is something very similar to what you may have mentioned to him 3 or 4 months prior, but it's his idea now, so therefore it works.
Webster.
You don't have actually any official membership, do you? Like, you just have to turn up at the odd meeting or two, or walk into the office now and again. As long as you're seen and he remembers who you are and you remind him what you actually can do, you can be in the cult of Webster, can't you?
Yes, the first rule about the cult of Webster is you don't talk about the cult of Webster.
Lorraine does do secret handshakes and things like that sometimes, you know, so there could be something going on there.
Well, what happens is he drags us all in, takes us from all organisations to Streetwise, and that's when we get the cult going. And you have to be, once you're on the board of directors, that's you for life.
I cannot tell you anything about the cult of Webster. In fact, I have heard he dresses up as Batman. I don't know if he does anything, he just likes to dress up as Batman, that's all I know.
Meet up once a week. It's been strange since the cult has kind of went online more. The Zoom cult meetings are weird, like you have to provide your own sacrifice and stuff, and I think we go through a set of stilts a week, just trying to look burning that effigy of the web.
Jim does look after us all. He's our leader. Jim, like even now with lockdown and all, he's making sure we've all got work. Like I went and said, oh, I'd love to do another workshop with P7s. He said, look, I'll work it out. We can sort out the funding and things around. He looks after us all. We're a gang.
And thus, Jim decided to turn his back on Streetwise Community Circus and focus on a future he always desired.
Isn't really going to turn his back on Streetwise. Jim can't give it up. He's addicted. Well, if he doesn't do that, he'll have to get addicted to something else. He could go back to his running.
I think Jim would be a really good bus driver. Wouldn't it be great? He likes driving. He can keep moving. He can talk to people, and he can make bus journeys a lot more interesting. And
like a bingo operator. The guy that calls out the balls. 88!
Well, I could pay Lorraine off and take her job.
I kind of picture Jim in maybe an open all hours kind of scenario, like running a little corner shop and telling slightly sexist jokes to all the customers. I don't know, I think I kind of definitely picture Jim as a wheeler dealer type of, like taking old vintage cars, putting them on stilts and selling them off.
Possibly a seller of, you know, those household items that you really think that you need whenever the person is telling you about them, and then you come away with 2 of them and you're like, great, I never need to grate my vegetables for my coleslaw again, and then you realise you've never made coleslaw.
But if he does go, I reckon, you know the sort of late night TV, sort of online shop thing, the QVC crap, I reckon Jim would be good at that.
I can't see Jim doing another job. He's not going to walk away. He may retire, but he'll be in the office the next day. I think if he starts embezzling now, he'll be fine.
Job that I think Jim could, 60. He'll be turning 60. I don't know, what job could he do if he left Streetwise? And I'd say the Webster hotline.
Well, I think I heard David Boyd might be retiring, so he could go for that because he doesn't have to do much there, so he could just sit back and enjoy all his funding. Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Or politician. He can contact everyone, get things done, not scared of who's not talking to who, he'll just get involved with them. He knows how to get that done, yeah.
Del Boy impersonator, that I think he'd like that one. Bit big for it.
Premier Circus are always looking people to work in the office. I think he'd be great. Creative director or something. I think he'd fit right in there.
I don't know, maybe I'd vote for him for Stormont. I think I'd like to see Jim in Stormont. I mean, he would have no worries, you know, there'd be no baggage at all. And I'd love to see his take on getting them all to talk to each other. It would be hilarious. He'd have them all walking on stilts first, before they do anything.
What are we looking for?
I turn my microphone on. Can you hear me? It's lucky.
What are you looking for?
4 words I'd use to describe Jim are he's charitable, he's utilitarian, he's nice, and he's timely.
4 words, I can give you 7. Believable, artistic, lovable, likeable. He's got a brass neck. He's autistic, but at the end of the day, he's great.
Tremendous, witty, intuitive, and talented.
Retire? He'll never retire. Well, he's not allowed to retire as such. I can't see him retired, but what would he do? I can't imagine. I have no idea.